It's your open source advocate, and I'm back. I've got another video, and this is one that I've been talking about for a long time, so I hope you guys will enjoy it. But I'm going to do one on a PBX system. So if you're not familiar with what that is, it's a phone-based exchange, and in this case we're going to do FusionPBX, which is based on Freeswitch. So there's a couple of big open source PBX systems out there. The first one is Asterisk, and you've probably heard of it. The second one is Freeswitch. They both do very similar things, but they have their own pluses and minuses, of course. I have tried Asterisk with a free PBX, not to be confused with Freeswitch, with free PBX front end on it. And it was good. I like the UI, I like the user interface and the experience, but I had a lot of trouble keeping unwanted calls from coming in. Basically, once you set up a PBX on the internet, there's bots out there that are just searching and hitting all of the ports for your PBX systems constantly. So you need some other things set up, like firewalls and fail to ban and just a few other really useful tools that at the time, especially when I was learning, I didn't know about. But when I found FusionPBX and I set it up with the script that you're going to see, the script actually installed all of the things that I needed on top of that, besides the free PBX that free PBX didn't do. So FusionPBX is a front end that works on top of Freeswitch. They're both open source and self-hostable, of course. Now, FusionPBX, they run on a way of, we sell training, so they do have training opportunities for you. They have some free stuff if you create an account, but they also have some paid training that'll get you even further if you want extra training to really become an expert. What I'm going to go through in this first part of the video, first section, is getting it installed. The second section will be just setting up a user or a couple of users and extensions, and basically that will let you call from computer to computer or device to device on your PBX. Now, that is not going to let you make phone calls out to regular phone numbers or receive calls in from regular phone numbers yet. There's other steps that you have to do for that. So I'll do a second video where we're setting up that part of it. And then there's some plugins and modules and things that are worthwhile to look at and understand as well in the system, like integrated voice recorders, or voice responses, so you can set up the menu system that you get, right? Press 1 for X, press 2 for this, press 3 for that, whatever. And you can route calls to certain places, and you can set up call groups so that when a call comes in, it goes to a specific call group. And you can really kind of get it where you have like your support team all gets the same call and someone can pick it up. So that's kind of what we're going to do in this first setup today. So we'll kind of jump into it here pretty quick. I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and all of my patrons over at Patreon. Seriously, you guys make this so worth it for me to do these videos every week. I really truly enjoy it, and I just can't say thank you enough. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe. Let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job by subscribing to the channel. Plus, you'll get notified when I have new videos coming out. And finally, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, give it a like. Just click on that thumbs up, and that way YouTube knows that you like it, and they'll pass it along to other people that might enjoy my content as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. Let's get started. Out of the gate, we're going to go to FusionPBX.com/download. Not downloads, but download. And you'll see here they've got quite a few options. They've got Debian, so you can do Debian 9 or Debian 10. They've got Raspberry Pi OS, so if you want to run this off of a Raspberry Pi, you can do that as well. And it shows that they support Pi 2, 3, and 4, and 0W. I don't know if I'd want to run a PBX off of a 0W. If it's just for you and your 3 family members, it might be fine, but I would probably go with like a Pi 4 and probably a decent Pi 4 with like 4 gigs or something maybe, just to make sure that you're getting what you want and that you've got throughput enough to do everything you're trying to do. But you do have Raspberry Pi options. They have a Ubuntu install for 1804 LTS. I don't believe they have 2004 covered yet, so I wouldn't try to put it on something other than what they recommend here. They do have FreeBSD for you FreeBSD/Unix users, so that makes it really nice if you're a FreeBSD person. CentOS, so again, if you prefer like a long-term support type stable Red Hat system, here's CentOS. Now I know CentOS is kind of changing what it's going to be as it moves forward, and I know you guys are trying to figure that out, but for now it does support CentOS 7, which is pretty awesome. So the web server itself runs Nginx, and then they have PostgreSQL in the background along, and you could use SQLite, but I think the script sets up PostgreSQL anyway, so that's pretty cool. So we're going to use these scripts to get this done, and I'm going to set this up on a VPS because I want it to be available through the internet so that I can have multiple places talking across the internet through the PBX for one thing. But the other part of that is you can set it up on your home network, but then you have to do some special stuff with ports and things like that to allow traffic through. And there's quite a few ports that PBX Systems use. So be aware of that before you get started. You'll want to go look at the documentation to see what ports you need to open and pass through and things like that. So I'm going to do this on a VPS just because it makes it a little bit easier in this case. And I think to get started, this is a good idea. And you can get a cheap VPS out there for almost, for a few dollars a month. So I'm going to jump over here to DigitalOcean. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to create a droplet. And I noticed DigitalOcean's prices changed recently. So I'll kind of show you that in a minute and talk about it. But I'm going to jump over here to Debian. And I'm going to pick Debian 10 since they say they support Debian 10. It's just a little bit newer version than Debian 9. You have your 5s, 10, 15, 20, and then you can bump up. So this is what's costing the extra couple of dollars. And then they have premium AMD, which apparently is the same price. I don't know why it matters, but this is basically what kind of CPU you can get. I think if it runs on a Raspberry Pi, you're probably fine with a regular Intel. I'm going to go with a $5 a month droplet, and for that you get a gigabyte CPU, one CPU, 1 gigabyte of RAM, and 25 gigabytes of solid-state drive space, and a terabyte of transfer. So I mean, it's ridiculous how much you get out of that. It should handle my little bit of traffic fine. Now, if you're going to run this for a freaking call center where you're going to have 40, 50, 60 people making multiple calls at a time, you need to go bigger than this, and you probably need to go a lot bigger than this. But to prove out the concept, I want you to see what's going on and prove out what the software can do. So I'm going to pick a location that's geographically close to me. So I could pick New York, or I could pick San Francisco. Amsterdam is not close to me. I could probably pick Toronto. It's probably just as close, if not honestly a little closer than either of these. But New York's fine. It just defaults to it. That's okay. Next thing up here, they've got a heads up, so you can do a VPC network, which is a virtual private network inside of their systems, which is pretty cool. Kind of getting up there with AWS, offering that. Nothing we need. Additional options if you want them, nothing I need here, and then SSH keys. So I'm going to pick my SSH keys because it makes logging in through the terminal a lot easier. If you don't have SSH keys already set up, or you don't know how to do it, don't worry, you can click on password and just put in a really strong password, like long, 15 characters, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols, everything, right? That'll give you a good strong protection on your SSH. But right here, I'm going to go with my SSH keys. So let me select those and we'll move forward. All right, got my SSH keys selected there, and then we're going to give this a name for a URL. You can just use the IP if you want to, but I'm going to give this a URL in my case. I'm going to call it tell.opensourceisawesome.com. Nope, let me make sure I spell it right. There we go. Awesome.com. There we go. So this is going to set the host name of my server for one thing. So it's important that you type things correctly and that it matches what you want in the long run. We're going to do create. It's not going to take very long here. And while we're waiting on that thing to start running, I'm going to go over to my registrar for my domain name, opensourceisawesome.com, and that's in my case Hover. I really like Hover. I like their dashboard. It's very easy to use. But we've got DNS here, so I come into Hover. I pick my URL that I want to work with. And I'm going to come into DNS, and I'm just going to say create a new A record. I'm going to make sure it's on A. I'm going to type in tell because that's what I called it. And then I'm going to go grab that IP address. I'm going to change this to 5 minutes, and then I'm just going to grab that IP from DigitalOcean here. We'll give it just a second to finish creating my server. It takes 30, 40 seconds. I mean, it doesn't take long. There we go, really quick. I'm going to copy that IP address, and I'm going to go back into Hover here, and I'm going to paste that IP address in. I'm going to save that change, and like I said, I set it for 5 minutes. Now I've got that IP copied already, so we'll go and bring up the terminal, and I'll kind of center this on the screen, and I'll make the font a bit bigger so it's easier for you guys to see what I'm typing if you're using your phones to watch these things especially. So first thing I always do is SSH root at, and I'll just use the IP for now, and you can paste in something like that with Control-Shift-V like Victor in the terminal. So this is going to prompt me about allowing it. I'm just going to say always allow me to SSH for this one. And then I'm going to say yes. Now you may not have that internal firewall, application firewall, don't sweat it. So once you get logged in, you want to clear out the terminal there, and then you're going to do sudo apt update ampersand sudo apt upgrade, and then I just put -y so it doesn't prompt me about doing the upgrades. I want it to go get all the updated stuff, update my system completely, and then I'm ready to go with the next step after I do a quick reboot I just like to make sure all the system updates are done and that are available, so that I don't have to worry about something breaking afterwards. Alright, once everything finishes, you can just type in reboot. That'll knock you off the connection and it will reboot your VPS real quick, and that takes about 20 seconds. It does not take long on DigitalOcean. It's extremely fast, actually. And while we're waiting on that to reboot, we'll jump over here to the downloads page, and for me I'm using Debian, so I'm going to use this command right here. This is the first one I want. I'm going to copy it with Control-C. I'll come back into my terminal. I'm going to go back into my SSH, and this time I'm going to try to use the actual domain that I set up, so tel.opensourceisawesome.com. And it doesn't like it because I had this set up when I was doing practice, so let me go get rid of it real quick. And we'll try that again. There we go, yes. And it lets me in with my SSH keys. And now I'm going to go and copy this again because I just copied something over it. So copy it, come back in, paste in that command, just double check it, make sure it looks like you got everything included. We're going to run that, and it's going to go out and just going to download the script that we need. And then it's going to update everything that we need here inside of Debian again. It'll just take you a quick second for this to run through. There we go. And now we're actually going to run that script. So this is the command we need to run that script. So we're going to do Control Copy again, and then Control Shift V to paste that in. Double check, make sure we got everything included when we copied it, and we're going to hit Enter and let it run. Okay, that took a little bit of time, so be patient, but you should get something like this. And when you finish in the terminal, you don't just want to close the terminal. You want to look at this IP address, because this should be the IP address that you have set up in your VPS or for your home public IP address. You've got your login username and your login password, and of course we'll change this in a minute, so I'm not worried about if you guys see it. But you can just control click on that thing. We'll just copy it, never mind. We'll just copy and paste. You usually can control click and get it to open. Let's see if I just click. Yeah. So we'll copy it with Control Shift C. I'm going to go back to my browser, open up a new tab, paste it in. And you're going to get a security warning because it does have self-signed certificates, so you can click through those as long as you know you're typing in the right IP address. The username is going to be admin at, and then you have to put in that IP you just copied. So you need to just get rid of the https://. So it needs to look like that. If you just type in admin, it won't log in. Even though you're putting in the right username and password, it'll give you all kinds of trouble. So please make sure to take note of that. You need to put it in as admin at the IP address, not the URL, but the IP address. Again, we'll copy the password, and we'll paste it in, and we'll log in, and I'll just tell it don't save because we're going to change that in a minute. But now, there we go. We are inside of our freshly installed FusionPBX, and we are ready to get everything set up and going so that we can actually make some calls. So before we do anything, actually, we should probably go over to Users, and we want to change the password for our admin user here. Now you can change everything about this user, but we're going to leave him as admin, and we're going to put in a new password. Want to make sure you use a strong password. And then we've got to put in an email. And really that's the only thing you have to set, although there are a lot of other options here you can set, so feel free to do those. I'm going to click Save. And you'll get an update complete message up there when it works correctly. So we're going to go ahead and come over and just set up a couple of other things. We're going to go to Domains. And you'll see here it's got the IP address already. But we're going to go ahead and add another domain, and we're going to give it the domain name, and then we're going to make sure it's enabled, and this is domain URL, and we'll save it. And again, you should get the add complete message there, and now we've got two enabled domains. Now the next thing we want to do is go down here to SIP profiles, and we're going to go into first external and then internal. We're going to ignore the IPv6 for now. We're going to go down until we find RTP.IP right here. And you see it's got this kind of variable. I want to actually go and grab again the IP address of our server here. So we're going to go to DigitalOcean. I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to paste it right into that blank. And then I'm going to move down to here where it says SIP IP. I'm going to get rid of this and paste that in again. I'm going to click on Save. And now I'm going to go back over and Advanced SIP Profiles. Now you could have just clicked the back button as well. We're going to go to Internal, and we're going to do the same thing on Internal. Now this one has a few more options, so it's a little more scrolling to get down there to the RTP-IP, but it is down here, right here. Get rid of it, paste in the IP, and the same thing again with the SIP IP right here. Get rid of it, paste it in, and then click on Save. Make sure you get the completed message. There we go. And then now we're going to go over to Status, and we're going to go to SIP Status. And right here, we'll see we've got the profile external and profile internal. So we'll just start first internal. We're going to click on Restart, and then we're going to click on Restart External. Let's see here. Restarting. Okay, and now we can reload with this button right here. And you'll see that we've got 4 profiles that are running, which is good. Now, we've kind of got all of the little base setup out of the way. That's not everything you can do by any stretch of the imagination, but that's some of it. There's also settings right here, and there are a lot of settings in this system that you can take advantage of. I'm not going to change any of these things. Just know that this stuff is here, so you can have event socket ACL, ports. I mean, just everything that you've got here that's kind of set up to run, you can change here. So this is one set of settings in the system. All of this stuff is really kind of configuration and settings. So that's what I mean when I say there's a lot of settings in the system. There is upgrade. There are variables. And then, of course, we hit domains already. There's access controls, databases, default settings, email templates, group manager. So we're going to go over here and we're going to actually create a couple of users. So you can create extensions, you can create users. There's all of this stuff is things that you need. But right now we have a system set up, but we don't have any way to make phone calls because we don't have any extensions. But then we want those extensions to be assigned to users or to a group. So we're gonna go over here. We're going to go to users. And you'll see here we've got the default admin user, which is fine, but I'm going to add another user. And you have to kind of go through and just give all of this information. So username is Brian, password, and this is a user's information. This is not the same as an extension, so I'll explain in a minute. So give your users a password. This is how they log into the system to actually check voicemails, things like that. And then if you get green around these little boxes, that means that you've set it and they match. So just fill out most of these things. You can fill out language and time zone. So English, United States, time zone is America. And then I'll have to scroll down for Chicago for me. Of course, set up your own time zone. Status, we'll put available. And then first name. So you can just fill out this stuff for your users real quick. And of course you can import users as well if you have a huge number of users. Groups, I'm going to make him a super admin. Domain, I'm going to put him in the tel domain. He doesn't need an API key and he's enabled, so we'll save. And now we're going to go up and we're going to do another user. So one thing to keep in mind, which I wasn't, is that up here you can control the different domains. So because I added Brian under this domain, he didn't show up here, of course. So if I want to work on this domain, I have to click over here. Admin is a super admin, Brian is a super admin. Our next user is just going to be an agent. So we're just going to go here, we're going to go to users again, and then we're going to do add. And we're going to give him a username of Testy. and a password. And again, you need to use strong passwords for your users. So let's save him. Okay, now we've added users, but again, these users don't have any extensions, so it doesn't help them right now. But we're going to go add some extensions right now. So once you get into extensions, this is pretty straightforward, but you need to decide how you want to set up your extensions. And extensions can be set up in ways that make sense for your organization. So think about if it's an organization, maybe you have support and sales and marketing and administrative, IT, so on. So you may want to set up your number extensions in a way that makes sense for that. Maybe 1100 is sales and 1200 is marketing and 1300 is admin and 1400 is IT and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up an extension called 100, and I'm going to set up a number alias of 100, and I'm going to set up 3. I'm going to set my user to Brian on this one. And I'm going to set up a voicemail password for Brian, which is not super secure, but there you go. Access code the same way, or actually account code, I'm going to make 100. And then device provisioning. So if I was going to actually provision out, like I've got a couple of actual hardware phones over here that are IP phones, if I set things up over here in the settings under devices and such, then I can provision those devices from here, and it makes it faster if you're an admin, like an admin user that's trying to set up a system for an organization. But if you're not, you can just manually do it through each phone. My effective caller ID number. So what do I want this to look like, internally? So my extension basically, and then my external caller ID number. Oh, let's see. Name. Sorry, caller ID name. So this is Brian. And then this is 100, and then my outbound caller ID name, so this could be my company, and then caller ID number could be my company number, so 830, I don't even remember what it is off the top of my head. I'd have to look at my business card. We'll just use this right here, 555. That's not it. Don't call that number. I don't know what that is, but there we go. Now, if you have an emergency and you need to call 911 or 999 or wherever you are in the world, you want to make sure that they get the correct number and address for where you're calling from in case they need to call you back. So again, make sure you type in the right thing. 5255. If that's not your actual number, you could put an 800 number, those kind of things. So, name, sorry, put your actual name. Oops. And then 830. And then so let's just say this is a better number to call me back at. I'm going to do that. And then my full name for the directory in the system. So, and am I visible in the directory? Yes. Directory extension visible? Yes. And then how many phone calls I can have going at once, like on hold and so on and so forth. 5 is more than enough in my opinion. I'm probably going to set this to 2, and then it's going to go to a busy signal. So that's what this sets. And voicemail enabled, yes, and voicemail mail to. So you can have your voicemail messages emailed to your user if you set up the email in the system. So I'm going to go here and I'm just going to say brian@fixitdelrio.com. And then the audio file attachment is what I want, but you do have other options. So you could send it as a link or a download link. So if you do a listen link, you'd have to say login required. If you do it as a download link, you would download the actual voicemail attachment and listen to it offline, and then you can just do it as an attachment this way. Voicemail, keep local, true. So whether or not to keep it in the system, and then missed calls, what do I want it to do? You can say email me if I miss any calls so I can call that person back, and it emails you with the phone number that it identified and things like that. I just don't set this one right now, but you can. This is allow toll numbers. If you want to allow toll numbers for certain folks, you can do that, just depending on what they have to call and who they have to call, but this can rack up charges and things later when we set up the actual phone line, so just be aware of that. Call timeout is 30 seconds, and then it's going to go to voicemail or something. My call group, so I'm just going to call this support, and then call screen, So can I screen calls? Basically kind of like the Google Voice where you can listen to the call a little bit before you decide to answer. I'm going to put false, that's fine. Record the calls, disabled, but you have other choices. You can record all calls, local calls, inbound calls, outbound calls, etc. You better know the laws in your area before you record a call without someone else knowing about it, so be careful about that. Hold music, so you can choose hold music, and I'm just going to pick the default, but you can upload your own hold music as well to select if you want to. The domain, again, I want this domain so it's correct, and context is fine. And then enabled true, and description, this is Brian extension. And we'll do save. Make sure it shows that it's saved. And there we got 101 and 102, but they're all assigned to me. So all I'm going to do is go in here and edit. I'm going to edit 100. So I'm going to go in here and edit 100. I'm going to change this to not be me. So I'm going to take this user out. And I'm going to set this as nobody. And I'm going to see if it'll let me save. And then I'm going to go down and actually fix a bunch of these things where it's got specific information for me. This is going to be admin. This is going to be reception. So just make sure everything looks good there, and then we're going to put reception extension. Save that. Okay, it says update complete. Great. We're going to go back to our list. There we go. Now I'm going to leave this one as me, and then I'm going to change this one to testy. So that looks good. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back. I'm going to look at one more thing that I had set here for Brian because I didn't change something. There's this one, 101. And then this one, which is the caller ID number for internal, should be 101. So there we go. We'll save that. Okay. So now we've got 2 users and 2 extensions set up, and we need to set up a soft phone or a hardware phone or something to start using these extensions to make calls. So on the Mac, I use an application called Telephone. It's very basic. It's very simple. You can pay for a subscription to get a couple of more features, but really the simple basic part is really great. You can get it right on the Mac App Store for your Macintosh. If you're on Linux like this one, then the one that I use is called Twinkle SoftPhone, and it's got a little star for the Twinkle. There we go. So as it comes up, you see that I've got this thing, and it says registration failed, and that's okay. I'm going to go through here and kind of fix a few things, but this thing has just a ton of capability and a lot of stuff in it. So don't let the name throw you. It's really actually an amazing little soft phone. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to edit my profile. So when you get in here, you create a profile the first time. So I'm 101. I'm Brian, and this is correct. But I probably have to change this password, but I need to go check my password in here for my extension. Now this is what you're going to use. So when you're looking at Twinkle, you notice it's 101. Here's my domain. Here's the domain that I want it to use. Authentication name is still 101, so it's my extension. It's not my user. And then it's the password for the extension that I want to make sure that I'm actually getting. Now if you remember, we didn't set up a password for the extension. So I'm going to go in here and double check the password, and I'm going to get rid of this one, and I'm going to paste in their password. I'm going to say OK, and then it's going to come tell us registration failed, but I'm going to try to register again. Now we've got registration succeeded, so I am connected. So I'm right now connected with this soft phone to our FusionPBX. It really didn't take a lot to get this set up. It was, a few steps, getting a few things kind of set. Now I'm going to go to my Mac and open up the Telephone app, and I'm going to set up the Testy extension over there, and then we'll do a little phone call to see how things are working now. The way the mic is set up right now, it won't work, so I'm going to have to switch out to a headset mic, and I apologize, the audio is going to be even worse than this one probably, but hopefully you'll be able to hear what's going on when I do that. Yeah, it says available, so it did come up, which is great. And now from Testy, I should be able to call this machine over here with the Twinkle soft phone. And you'll see a couple of things happen, so I'll kind of move this over a little bit. Let me go and switch out the mics, so give me 1 second. I apologize for any noise, but I'll try to cut it out. Okay, I've got my other headset plugged in. Let me just check and make sure it's recording. Okay, so I've got it recording. Everything seems to be working, so I'm going to place a phone call from Testy to Brian. So from the Mac to this machine here, and I don't know if you can hear it. It is ringing, so you can see it here on the screen, kind of how it looks, and I can answer. And again, now I'm in a call with my Mac, which is two different machines on the same network, but this is all going out to a VPS anyways over the internet. So really, I've got this set up to do calls through an extension, which is pretty great. And then of course I can just click on buy and it'll hang up. But there you go. Everything is set up. Everything was pretty straightforward, other than me just needing to restart the application here once I got it registered the first time. And now we've got calls going back and forth between our different machines, and we can make phone calls to other extensions within our network. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it, and I'll talk to you next time.